people buy with their emotions and they justify it with their head. And the more that you can kind of appeal to the emotions of people and, kind of connect with them that way, much more powerful than just facts, figures, and numbers.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport, a podcast created for and by marketing professionals who seek to better understand their consumers and design unique, personalized experiences that stand out in today's market. In each episode, hosts from Verisk Marketing Solutions connect you to industry thought leaders, practitioners, and experts focused on improving B2C experiences through powerful data-driven insights. It's about how we connect with our consumers and where we can partner together to do it better. This is the Marketing Rapport.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport podcast. I'm Tim Finnigan. I'm Director of Product Marketing at Verisk Marketing Solutions. And welcome to the podcast. We've got a great guest today. Before I give away who it is, if you were listening through the beginning part of it, one of the things that a couple things that we're really focused on here at the Marketing Rapport is to have thought leaders, have people that are experienced marketers or practitioners that are experts in their field and have actually taken the consumer experience, thought about it, and done something with it and had some great outcomes. And our guest today checks all those boxes. Today joining me is Bob Armour. He's the CMO of M1 Finance. Before he was at M1, he was CMO at Jellyvision and CMO at Guaranteed Rate. Welcome to the podcast, Bob.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the intro and all the nice words. I don't know if I live up to it, but I'll do my best.
Oh, great. So, hey, you've got an impressive LinkedIn profile. I may have been creeping on the profile, but I want to know what have we missed? Like, what else is out there? Who is Bob Armour besides being this great marketer?
Gosh, Bostonian by birth. You might sense that in my accent every once in a while. I'm an 80s music lover, especially one-hit wonders. And I was a volunteer high school teacher in American Samoa a million years ago.
Great. I love it. And guess what? I've sort of set you up for that because, I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but Bob and I know each other for the last couple of years. And I've got 5 questions. They're 80s one-hit wonders. I'm going to name the song. And if you can tell me who the artist is and you get 3 out of 5, we're going to continue. If not, the podcast is over. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, you're putting me, that's a pretty intense expectation, but I'll do my best.
Okay. Number 1, Tainted Love.
Soft Cell.
Correct. I Ran So Far Away.
And that's the Flock of Seagulls.
Correct. 2 for 2. This might be too easy. I Melt With You.
Modern English, of course.
Correct. 3 for 3. Too Shy.
Too Shy, Hush, Hush, Eye to Eye. Oh, gosh. I'm not going to get that one. What is it?
Time's up. Kajagoogoo. And the last one, this is a bonus one because you're already at 3 to 5, is Relax.
Oh, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, of course.
Side note, I knew a girl who dated the drummer of Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
That's super cool.
Wait, I was getting worried because all the ones were like love songs. Tainted Love, I Ran So Far Away, I Melt With You. I think there was a theme, and because I have a crush on you. But and just to let everyone know who's listening, is that Bob and I actually met, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. Bob, remember there was like a CMO marketers networking event, and you and I did the name game, and we found out we knew a ton of people, and we lived like 3 blocks from each other, and we still live.
And our daughters are pals with each other.
Yes, they are. So one of the things that in that discussion that I really keyed on with you is you talk about your purpose and how like your purpose is to be helpful and empower others. Could you just sort of expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I believe in karma. I believe that kind of what you give is what you get, and people sense that. And in a weird sort of way, the universe responds to that. And I think that the things that you put out in terms of goodness come back to you in unexpected and fruitful ways. So I just buy into that philosophy, and I think I try to convey that when in my marketing activities. And I think people key on that and appreciate that and reciprocate on that.
Great. So Bob, when you talk about, being a marketer, let's sort of dive into M1 Finance and what you're doing there. Because I got to imagine being a marketer and leading the whole team at M1, you're probably going up against some of the biggest names, as far as competitors. And first question is maybe talk about M1 Finance and what your objective is or what your goal is there. And then, how you overcome sort of being the new guy to the party.
Sure. So M1 is a personal wealth building platform that combines free investing, high yield savings, low cost borrowing, and great cash back on a credit card. We believe that there's room in the market to offer kind of a digitized private bank experience to people that have, that don't have the 10 or $25 million to get the same services at a private bank, but bringing those services in a digitized form, in a very easy to use form to the mass affluent, people that are in the top 20% of net worth in the United States. We have $5.5 billion worth of assets on our platform, about 500,000 account holders. And, we are chasing the customers that are currently serviced by all the name brand financial institutions. Think Fidelity, think Vanguard, think Charles Schwab, think, Chase. And we strongly believe that we have a better product, both in terms of UI, UX, and ease of use, as well as better rates. We offer high yield checking and savings that's significantly better than any of the banks. We have a credit card that has incredible cashback savings up to 10%. So our package of UI, UX, and actual kind of economics are better. Our challenge, frankly, Tim, is like inertia and breaking inertia of those clients. You ask people, where do they bank? And they'll say something like Chase. And then you'll say, why are you there? Why are you there when they're paying you almost nothing in interest? And they'll be like, I don't know, it's fine. So we're battling against fine. We're not battling against pain, which I think is a lot easier to kind of boost people out of. So we have to be, we have to show ourselves being better all the time. We have to compare ourselves to these companies all the time. We have to, kind of appeal to people's wallets in terms of how we promote and get people to move, because there's economic benefit to actually moving to us. And then we also try to do it emotionally, where, it's kind of comparing the people that we're looking at to try to bring in to people that we serve now, and trying to plant seeds of doubt in terms of like, hey, I'm at Chase, but like they're expressing the fact that there's a lot of people that look like me that are here. Perhaps I should be there. So it's hard. It's a constant chipping away across those three pillars of familiarity, facts, and FOMO that we try to use to, kind of get people to stand up, take notice, and then ultimately become customers.
I was hoping you were going to touch on the 3 Fs, especially the fear of missing out. Like, what's happening over there that maybe I should come over there? And how do you do it? Because I know in some businesses we'll use somebody like Forrester or Gartner and say, okay, hey, they wrote a paper about us, or they wrote some industry, or we're ranked in a quadrant or something. How do you as a marketer get people to feel comfortable enough or trust you enough to say, hey, we're gonna stop banking there, we're gonna come over here? It seems like it's not an easy decision to make.
It's not easy. And I think, one, there are some myths that we try to overcome. It's not that hard to pick up a brokerage account, say from Fidelity, and bring it over to M1. It takes 4 minutes on our site and we'll take care of it. So that's one thing, is breaking down the, misinformation about it. Another thing is we use, I kind of mentioned the 3 Fs. We use facts. We have probably, I don't know, don't quote me on it. You can look at my website, but there's probably $300 million of assets that have come over from big names like Fidelity, and we'll make sure that people know that. And then we will do testimonials of people that have done it and the fact that they're now here, the fact that they're very happy with it. And for a large number of our clients, we have a client development team that actually calls people, welcomes them to M1, helps them with kind of understanding the platform, makes a human connection so that they know that it's just not, like a server farm that's running this thing, that there's real people who care about their money and are there to help them if they need anything. So there's no one thing that we do that kind of wins. It's a combination of things. And, trust is built up over a long period of time. And we have people who try us for some period of time and see what the experience is and then like what they're getting. And then they'll move over their money as we build that trust with them.
So, Bob, when you look at what you're doing with M1, how does that compare to when you were at Guaranteed Rate? You're leading the marketing organizations for both ones. It seems like maybe M1 is more cutting edge and maybe a different type of end user or persona versus Guaranteed Rate, maybe your old school mortgage innovation. So if you could just touch on that.
Yeah, so when I joined Guaranteed Rate, I was there to help stand up the online business, and Guaranteed Rate is kind of a hybrid of in-market loan officers, kind of the traditional loan officers, as well as direct to consumers where consumers go to a website and get a mortgage. So we try to leverage both sides of that because there's good with both. A primary difference is really, a mortgage is a once or twice or 3-time experience for most people in their entire lives, right? So there is this air of mystery, extreme kind of lack of knowledge about, that process. So not unlike what we do at M1, at Guaranteed Rate, we tried to demystify the whole process to kind of boil it down and kind of help people understand, how to consider rates and how to consider credit scores and what they do to drive the different things in the rates. So we had, kind of in-field mortgage officers there, where at M1, it's all direct to consumer and coming to our website or our app. And then there are people internally that will connect with some of our clients. And the things that we're offering at M1 are a little more, customers are a little more knowledgeable with them. We appeal to a self-directed, do-it-yourself investor or manager of someone's wealth. So there is an element of like, these people are into it, they know what they're doing, and we give them the tools to kind of make sure that they stay on track with what they're up to. Guaranteed Rates, mortgages are scary and big dollars, and there's not a ton of quote unquote do-it-yourself mortgages. So there was a little bit more of breaking down the barrier and making sure that, the customer got exceptional loan officer support when they joined us, because it was, there was a finite period that they were kind of with us going through the process. And so we had to, take care of them in that way. And then we wanted to close out the relationship when the mortgage got funded in a way that was both like ended on a high and was also memorable, so that the loan officer would have a good opportunity to get word of mouth marketing from the people that they closed their mortgages with.
So, Bob, I'm sure you've read, every year there's a trends report, and I'm actually working on one for Veris Marketing Solutions, the 2023 trends. And it seems like they're the same topics every year: customer experience, personalization. What do you think some trends are, or how would you answer those two at the very least? But my real question is like, what should marketers be on the outlook for?
I mean, trend wise, I think you're right. I mean, I think the bar just keeps going up and up in terms of what people expect. And, I'll give you an example from my Guaranteed Rate days that we used, in terms of one of the features that we ended up producing in the product. And it was a mortgage tracker. And this mortgage tracker helped people get visibility into where their mortgage was in the process and how long it would take. And, just was a very easy way for the customer to self-serve and find out where it was. And I always found it, unique in the sense that like Domino's Pizza, right, has the like a pizza tracker. And if you think about a pizza tracker, right, you're only waiting 30 minutes. Do you really need visibility into something that's going to be at your house in 30 minutes for something that costs $5.99? But the reality is that's what people expect, right? And so with a mortgage, if you're getting a $400,000 mortgage and you don't know where it is or how it's going or anything, there's a massive disconnect in
right. A little more stressful too, right? It's a little more stressful.
For sure. But again, the expectation has been set in the customer's mind. I'm paying $5.99 and I have total visibility. You better damn well think I'm going to expect visibility for something that's $400,000 that is determining where my family's going to be, So I'd say, like, as a marketer and in terms of like working closely with product partners at companies, it's super important, I think, to be paying attention to things that are outside of your company that are setting the bar for what is good service and what is good transparency. So that's one example that I'll throw out. And I think as a marketer, I think we should all be aware of like what's happening outside so that we can relate to our customers when they're coming to us for whatever service we have. So that's one.
And Bob, here, let me just add on to that, because I think what you said is so important. And we need to, as marketers, we need to be aware. And I think one of the ways we can do it are things like this, where marketers are actually talking to each other and benchmarking. Like when we are rolling out a new product, I remember calling you and saying, hey, are we okay with this? Is this the right way to think about it? And it's just getting a different point of view. So I'm totally on board with you as far as not only being aware of inside what's happening, but sort of external forces as well.
Yeah. I mean, we'd like to think that our customers pay attention to our thing as much as we do, or as much as we think they do. The reality is they don't, and so when we're lucky enough to be servicing someone, we better be ready to kind of meet them with the expectations that they have built up from wherever they've built those things up, dominoes or otherwise.
So that's good. So if you would think about this question, is that I talk to college age students all the time about either guest lecturing when I go back to my kids' college, or just connecting with them and just trying to be a voice that, or someone that they can bounce ideas off of. And my statement to them is always the same thing. I'm going to give you the answer to the test. The answer to the test is you're going to get a job. Don't worry about it. But what you need to be stressed is, are you going to get the right job? Are you going to get someone that fits culturally, or that type of thing? And that's how you get back to what benchmarking and networking. That's how you get those perfect jobs. But when I always think back to like when I was 20, like what would I have done different? I'm curious if you would have done anything differently, or if you could go back to your 80s self and say, Bob, you should be doing this. And what are some of those things that you think about?
I mean, so I graduated college in '87, and I was a financial analyst at Merrill Lynch investment banking for a couple of years. So, heavy duty job, really liked it, and kind of built up the math skills, if you will, for my later life. I didn't really kind of imagine that marketing was going to be my future then. And the reason I say that is because, marketing has become as much science as it is art in terms of understanding returns and, where your spend is and what it's doing. And had I kind of had the foresight to like predict that, and that didn't really come around with any heavy force until the internet and search and direct marketing kind of became electric. I love marketing, and I wish that, again, I had the foresight to see that the marketing, my left brain and my right brain could have been very satisfied had I just taken a marketing path right out of the gate, because I ended up in finance, which I loved. I did my volunteer work as a teacher, which I loved, and then kind of eventually found my way into marketing. And I wish that, in some ways, I wish that I had kind of made that connection earlier and made the move. But I'll tell you, in terms of like advice that I give my kids all the time, it's like, find the thing you like to do, but then find the company or the industry that's growing like crazy and get into that first and foremost, and you'll find like your way to the right thing, because you'll be in the midst of like all sorts of things happening. So I don't know if that's useful for any future students that you talk to, but I'm a strong believer in, kind of go to the hot place and things just magically happen because you happen to be there and things are growing.
I love that answer, Bob, because the reason why is that you and I are aligned on this too, and I'm wondering what you would say to this, because I tell younger people all the time, like, it doesn't really matter what your job is. Go to the CMO and say, hey, I have this idea for a blog, an article, or anything to help out. And guess what? The CMO is probably going to say, that's a great idea. Do it.
Do it.
And just wondering what you think about that.
So, at M1, but just in general, we have this kind of, we have a bunch of values that we live by. One of them is bias for action. So if you see something that you think can be valuable to the company, go do it. Never play the victim, play offense, and, your willingness to kind of push things, even if they're out of your kind of like lane, if you will, go and do it. If that's what you're passionate about and that's where you see a need, that's the intersection of like where things are magic, because the company appreciates you and you love doing it. And so find that intersection. And if you, make the case that this blog post can add value and you want to do it because you love doing it, go do it. No one will stop you in this day and age. And if they do, you probably shouldn't be working for them.
Right. And that's interesting. I sort of keen on something you said before is like, and I sort of getting the idea that your career path trajectory isn't point A to point B. There's ups and downs and roller coasters. And I started my career as a salesperson because the marketing jobs were like, you'd have to go to an ad agency. So, right. And you're talking about left brain, right brain. I feel the same way as far as the sales side and the marketing side. They need to be, as a side note, I think sales is very undervalued profession. I think a lot of people need to, or all jobs are sales jobs because you're selling your ideas at some point. But I do like that different sides of the brain. And I think being a salesperson and what we called carrying the bag helps me as a marketer and saying, hey, I wish I would have had that as a sales rep.
And I think these days, so Jellyvision was where I was between Guaranteed Rate and M1. Jellyvision is a B2B company. And I was, I ran marketing there. And my philosophy was marketing is here to make sales successful. And the new, again, in B2B environments, there's very much the playbook in terms of who you're calling on, what's the buying group like, who's going to object to it, all of the things that are involved in a B2B sale. And if you're not like truly the partner of a sales leader or a salesperson who's calling into a company, like, I don't think you should exist, because you should be the one that's making it easy for the company and the salesperson to close the sale. So as much as I'm a marketer, like, sales is the hardest job there is, and it's the most important job. And in a B2B environment, if you're not properly set up to like arm the salespeople with the things that are going to make them successful, like, I don't think you should be a marketer in that setting.
It sounds like you're talking directly to me. Do you know something about what I did?
No, but again, like, I think,
Well,
I know enough B2B, that it is about the executing the playbook, and marketing is there to, be in some ways the servant of the sales team. And that's, I think, what's super.
I totally agree. And as you say, a servant of the salespeople, I think the same way, but I always talk about sales are my customers. So
right, for sure.
When I get there, it's like, what do you need? But sometimes you got to be careful with that because they'll tell you what they need. And it's like, you have to differentiate, okay, what do you need? What's nice and what's, required.
And I buy that 100%. It's kind of like, there's a transaction that happens, right? You and the sales team are in a transaction. There's no time in a transaction where either party should feel like they are getting one over one way or the other on that party. Like, you're not going to accept zero for a price in a transaction, and they wouldn't accept a low end product in a transaction. So I think it is that way, but I think the marketer has to be sure that they're not just there to be branding and pretty pictures. There's an element of kind of real meaty content and tools that are required by the salespeople that frankly only marketing can provide.
Yep. Great question. Or great answer. So Bob, I had mentioned earlier when I was giving my great introduction of myself that I'm lucky enough to be an adjunct instructor for an MBA program at Loyola University Chicago. And of course, when I needed some content, some space to be filled in, I called you up and said, Bob, would you guest lecture? You're like, of course, I'll jump in and help.
I think I said be careful what you ask for, but yes, I did.
Yes, I think that was it. What I loved, and I actually stole this idea when I talk at my company, and I shouldn't probably be saying this, but you talked about sort of your philosophy of inside out versus outside in and what that means. And there was a couple, and I want you to key on, you talk about the universal why and how to be memorable. Could you just, give an overview or share with the listeners sort of what that means, that inside out versus outside in?
Yeah, I think, and it relates to sales and marketing being partners here too. Oftentimes a client, prospect, whoever comes to a company and says, I need something. Whatever it is, whatever you supply, whatever it is. And a poor marketer or a poor salesperson will answer and say, oh, we have that, we do that, we have the best thing of that. That's their immediate knee-jerk reaction. That in this inside out, outside in, which I'd be happy to, again, share it with this audience if it makes sense. But I call that the functional why. Why are they there? In the case of M1, it's, I want to open up a brokerage account, right? Okay. We have awesome brokerage accounts. We can do it all day, every day. Do you want retirement? What do you need? A poor marketer or a poor salesperson stops there and starts answering the question. A better marketer or salesperson actually takes it to the next level and tries to get to the foundational why, which is, why are you trying to do fill in the blank? Open up a brokerage account, buy a software as a service, whatever it is. And the foundational why is often kind of the heart of what they're really trying to do. I'm trying to switch out a system and I need something that does this, or I need to get a retirement account because I'm looking to retire in 30 years, whatever it is. It's the foundational why. But a super, super, super good salesperson or marketer knows that there's one other why that's out there, and it's called the universal why. And the universal why for most buyers is because they don't want to deal with it anymore. Most buyers of a thing are they're interested enough because it's solving a problem, but then they want to go back, once the problem is solved, they want to go back to doing whatever they like doing, watching The Bachelor or who knows what, but they don't want to deal with your thing anymore. Fanboys or nerds they'll want to dig in and be super curious about your thing. But most people just want to get back to doing their job the way they want to. When you can reach that point of trustworthiness and you're seeing eye to eye, you're like, I get you. I know exactly why you're here. And I know exactly why you need to get to whatever else is you need to get to. Then you can start answering the questions of, we have the best thing and here's how we prove it. And then you get to kind of the discussion that maybe a poor person would have on page one, where you're getting it on, later in the book or later in the discussion. So it's super important, outside in gets you eventually to the universal why, and then inside out gets you to kind of the features and functions and, the discussion about the fit. But I think it's super important that you dig as a marketer and a salesperson into what are they really trying to do. And at the base of it, most of these people are really trying to get back to whatever floats their boat.
So when you talk about being memorable, Do you have an example of when maybe you did some type of campaign or something that was memorable that worked for you as a marketer?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about guaranteed rate. And for those, I mean, you have to be old enough to remember, or you have to be classical movie related to kind of connect to this, but hopefully this will suffice. One of Jimmy Stewart's movie is maybe his most famous movie is It's a Wonderful Life. And there's a scene in It's a Wonderful Life where Jimmy Stewart's character, George Bailey, he works at a bank. So he's helping people buy houses with mortgages. And there's a scene where he celebrates the mortgage that he has underwritten for one of the characters in the movie. And he celebrates it with bread, salt, and wine. And I can't remember exactly what those components mean, but they mean kind of like longevity and, things that like are impactful for somebody. So at Guaranteed Rate, we, when people closed their mortgage, we had a package that referenced the movie of bread, salt, and wine and kind of had a tie out with what the movie did and what Guaranteed Rate just did, so that the customer would remember, and so that the next time around, or when their friend had a need or family member had a need for a mortgage, they would say, not only was Guaranteed Rate great, in terms of service and rates and all the things, but they made it memorable, and they kind of reflected the emotion of the moment with that gift. So I'd say, all of us in marketing, I think it's trite to say, but people buy with their emotions, and they justify it with their head. And the more that you can kind of appeal to the emotions of people and, kind of connect with them that way, much more powerful than just facts, figures, and numbers. Facts, figures, and numbers are important. They've got to be there and you got to be competitive. But in a world where you can be just as competitive and you are more memorable, more likable, or more able to connect with somebody's heart, you're going to win.
Yeah. And Bob, that's a great story. And I can't believe you would even preface it by, has anybody not heard of It's a Wonderful Life?
I don't know these days, Tim. I don't know.
It's like I think it starts in Easter and it ends in, Christmas. But I think that's hard because as you're describing that, if you're doing any type of marketing campaign, it's like there's a fine line between being authentic and inspiring people and not being too cute. And it sounds like you maybe not worry about it, but you are aware of that. And hey, we need to inspire and be memorable and be authentic rather than just try to be something to grab a quick attention and being cute with it.
Yeah. And I think, one, it requires great creatives to kind of be along this, kind of ride with you in terms of putting it together. But I think it's also, there's an element of empathy here that I think is super important. So putting yourselves in the shoes of your buyer. I'll give you another example. At Jellyvision, we sold to HR executives. We sold software that helped the HR executives explain benefits, something that's horribly boring, confusing, but super critical to a company because it's very expensive and they want to make sure that their employees get the value that the company's putting into it. And many times, HR is not like a group that is, put out there as heroes. And, they're not typically the ones that are leading the company in terms of business results. I mean, we talked about sales, like great salespeople oftentimes are pointed out as the heroes of the company because they're driving it. We at Jellyvision, created a campaign where we created these characters that were superheroes connected to the HR executive so that, when we would connect with them, we wanted them to understand that we got them, that we knew that their job was super important but often overlooked. And so what was the way that we could connect with them? And we created this like really unique, cool movie poster. So it had kind of an old-timey comic book movie poster feel to it, where the hero was, I'm trying to think of the character's name, like Benistar, I think it was the character's name. And Benistar was like the hero. It was like a superwoman and, she was doing superhero things. And so I think even for something like that, benefit software, right? So as soon as I say that, everybody's like, oh, that sounds terrible. you can make it different. You can package it up and make it so that it lands and, again, connects emotionally with the people that are going to be using it and, frankly, buying it first.
Great story. Well, Bob, if I would go back to the beginning and if I were to say this podcast was successful, it's like, can everyone just take away one thing? I've got about 7 things that I've taken away that I'm going to start probably on tomorrow. So I want to thank you for not only sharing, your personal stories on sort of your career path, but what you see as important as a marketer and some things, interesting things that you've done to make yourself successful, as well as your company successful. So Bob, thank you so much for taking some time on the Marketing Rapport.
Tim, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And I'll leave your audience with one last thing. The greatest one-hit wonder of all time is A Million Miles Away by the Plimsouls. So look it up. It'll take you back to an 80s movie called Valley Girl, which is not a great movie, but the song was a huge hit. So thanks again for having me. I hope your audience returns despite having me here. So thank you.
Thanks again, Bob.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Report. This show is brought to you by Verisk Marketing Solutions, an organization created to help CMOs and their partners improve the reach, timing, relevance, and compliance of every consumer engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Report wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the show notes for more information.